One of 2025's most anticipated movies, Sinners, just came out, and many people are calling it one of the best movies of the decade. Every so often, a film comes along that doesn't just entertain, but it also elevates. Ryan Coogler's Sinners isn't just a film, it's a masterstroke of storytelling, a visual spectacle, and a reminder of what pure cinema looks like when it dares to speak truth with style and passion. Coogler doesn't just tell a new and original story, he crafts a cinematic experience that challenges, inspires, and also lingers. It's a film that proves the medium still has something urgent and powerful to say, while also proving that the theatrical experience for movies like this is the best way to have a great time. Now that I have seen the movie in theaters, I am ready to analyze how I think that Coogler was able to make pure cinema from the vampire genre and do so much more than just that. To everyone watching, what was your favorite part of this film, no matter if it was something from the filmmaking process or if it was inside the film itself, from the story to its characters and anything else? Let me know in the comments as we run through this video. I just mentioned his name multiple times, but it's worthy to mention practically every other sentence because he is the true reason why this movie is able to work as well as it does. Ryan Coogler is a genius within the filmmaking industry as a director and creative, a man who has done great work with original films and also genre and IP-based films, a guy who understands what it means to craft a blockbuster without the constraints of sticking to a more normalized way of making a film that you've probably seen a million times before. Sinners is able to give you a great look into the mind of someone like him, who is able to take risks within his storytelling methods, but also give you a look as to how the visual aesthetic of doing something like shooting on film can really bring you into the film even more. By making this movie about vampires as well, I think he also understands that genre is a very important thing to make an audience member understand what they are getting into before they see a film in today's climate. Back in the old days of the film industry, most of the time it was really the actors who tend to sell a lot of the films they were in, regardless of the genre, which is where we get the term movie star. It is a term that means something completely different nowadays, and what drives the film industry even more to that point is genre, but also I'd say even directors themselves. By combining a name like Ryan Coogler and the subgenre of horror with vampires, you have a combination that has interested people enough to the point where once they saw one trailer, it got them into it even more for what he was about to give them. You could also tell that he was probably heavily inspired by films like From Dusk Till Dawn with the setup, but also his usage of imagery around the vampires and how that harks back to some older vampire films as well. A movie that was set in stone to be its own kind of original blockbuster, and I think because we live in a time where a director's name might carry more weight than an actor's, I think that is ultimately one of the film's greatest success stories. I really do believe this, but I don't think that Sinners works if Ryan Coogler is not the one making it. This kind of film could easily have gone the more generic route if it was in the hands of another more lesser-known director who, you might say, has been known to make more generic kinds of films. Another director could easily have focused on spectacle over character development or pushing the main conflict out too quickly. Ryan Coogler doesn't do any of that and knows where to take advantage of the stuff that works for audiences. As it is, if you've seen the movie already, I think you also might understand why Coogler being the director needed to happen anyway, given the themes of the film that only someone like Coogler can speak to. If I'm wrong about that, I would happily love to hear anyone give me another name that they think could have done this movie better, that doesn't include someone like Christopher Nolan or someone like Denis Villeneuve. Tarantino maybe could have done it, given I actually did feel some aspects of this movie that kind of pertain to his style of filmmaking, but knowing Tarantino, there is no way he would have done what Coogler did with the tone. They are two very different kinds of directors when it comes to that aspect of filmmaking. On another hand, where someone like Coogler might be very similar to those kinds of directors is that he has an eye for the style of film that he wants to make here. In particular, this has to do with how he shot the film. It was reported way before the movie had come out that he collaborated with Christopher Nolan in a private conversation about how he was meant to go about shooting this on film. Coogler in an interview said, "I got advice from Christopher Nolan and his wife Emma Thomas, who are masters of the form. It was our first time working with large format photography," he said. "We were doing something that hasn't been done before, combining ultra Panavision with 2.76 by 1 very wide with the full frame IMAX film. Essentially, this means that he shot it on film with IMAX cameras instead of with digital cameras. Shooting on film essentially means that you are shooting it more photographic versus digital where it's more electronic, footage is saved on memory cards, and basically you can edit stuff right away if you wanted to. That's why you see a lot more people shooting on digital nowadays, because it's a much more simplistic way of going about making films. However, the reason why you actually see a lot more people say they prefer film over digital is because of how the quality of the image looks. The resolution looks much better, and it also looks way more clean on film as opposed to digital, where you may or may not see some filters used to make the image look like it's a lot less grainy. Essentially, you are either sacrificing the quality of the image, and it might make it take less time to process the film with digital, or by shooting on film, you are focusing more on the quality that it represents, but it might take a little longer for you to edit and process. Digital, in a sense, just offers you ways to cut corners, and to be clear, before anyone takes my words out of context, digital is not a terrible way of making films. There are plenty of good films over the years that have been made on digital. Hell, some of your favorites in the past 10 years that you've watched are probably made on digital. The point that most people are trying to make is that by shooting on film, it takes you back to a time where films, in a way, were made to look a lot better, and in today's day and age, it might benefit filmmakers a lot more if they tried to use the great qualities of shooting on film to amplify how their films look. I think Ryan Coogler understands this and has a passion for it, and you see so many people respect that passion and get more interested in who he is as a person, for how much he knows about the craft, and that is why, for me, he is now one of my favorite filmmakers. I'll tell you who else is now becoming one of my favorites in their profession, and that is the composer for the movie, Ludwig Göransson. His name is starting to become much bigger within the last however many years that he's been scoring movies and television, from creating the themes to stuff like Black Panther, Christopher Nolan's Tenet and Oppenheimer, and The Mandalorian for Star Wars, to more recently doing the scores for other Coogler films like Creed and now Sinners. This dude, like how Coogler has an eye for directing, he too has an eye for his craft of making music. So far, out of all the music that he's made in his career, I would say that this movie, more than other projects he's done, has music pertain more to the film as a character. If you've watched the movie already, you know what I'm talking about, but the music here in Sinners is just some of the best you will hear in a film as of recent. It doesn't sound generic, it actually feels like it pertains to the world, and this time, it also feels authentic enough in the way that it feels like they went into this actually caring about how the music would sound. Yes, it relates to the story, but also, it's just good enough to where it's not something you can say was bad or distracting about the film. There is one sequence within the usage of music in the middle part of the movie that involves all different kinds of music being present in the sequence, and when that happened, I was taken aback so much to the point where I was actually getting into it. It's a scene that also showcases that there is a supernatural effect to the movie as well, especially when you know how it connects to the character who spawns it. Ludwig was definitely involved in helping to craft that sequence, and of course, as was just mentioned, with shooting it on film, it made it come out even more in the IMAX format. I also love that the music within the film from his score is utilized for not just our main characters, but also the villains as well. That is why you are hearing most people come out of the movie saying that it feels like the music is its own character. It leaves a lasting mark on the film's quality, and as someone who appreciates a damn good score, I really do hope that particularly Coogler and Ludwig continue to keep working together because they are a great duo. The elephant in the room hasn't been mentioned much yet, so let's talk about it. Vampires. They are the film's main driving aspect of the conflict, and with that comes some amazing scenes and sequences. Jack O'Connell plays the main vampire and villain, and he is damn good in this movie with the role that he has to play. An actor I haven't really seen in any film since Unbroken back when I was in high school. He doesn't really come into the film until just about when the second act is ready to start. The first act was all set up for the most part, and right around the time when the second act begins, his character, along with the vampires in general, are introduced, getting us into everything that it has to do with leading them to where our main characters go. The thing that I really do appreciate about the way this film handles vampires is that Coogler does not treat this subgenre of a classic horror character like you don't know them already. He establishes quite quickly that vampires are something that people know about in this world, and are things that you can fend against if you just very quickly let your characters know what they have to do without having to give a big and unnecessary exposition dump about their lore. It is a smart and effective way of writing your film to treat the audience like they are smarter than you are. Now, admittedly, if you are coming into this film having already known that it tackles vampires, but are looking for an interesting background as to how they exist or where they come from, you are going to be very disappointed because that's not what the movie is about. As much as I was really curious to know where Jack O'Connell's character comes from, considering he is the only vampire that exists to the point where he got first introduced, I also simultaneously was just okay with not having to know that much about him. He is a very clever character that once he and the rest of the vampires make their way to the juke joint that the rest of our characters get together in, it becomes a lot more terrifying once you realize he is actually a lot smarter at getting to those people than you think he is. From a design and practical perspective, hats off to the makeup department for how they crafted the way these vampires look, especially near the end of the film where things get a lot more violent and you can see the immense amount of practical effects that they used instead of using visual effects and CGI, which could have made it look a lot worse. When it comes to selling the experience of handling these vampires, I think there is no better transition than to now go over and talk about the rest of the amazing cast. Everyone from Michael B. Jordan as the main twins Smoke and Stack, Hailee Steinfeld as Mary, Wunmi Mosaku as Annie, Delroy Lindo as Delta Slim, Jayme Lawson as Perline, Omar Miller as Cornbread, Li Jun Li as Grace, and maybe the standout of them all with Miles Caton as Sammy, or Preacher Boy as he goes by. I was really impressed by this kid who is giving his first on-screen performance. That man can sing with such a beautiful voice, and his character by the end of the film was one that I was rooting for every second. The rest of the cast is just stellar, and there is nothing more that I love in the world than when you can watch actors really sell what they are experiencing on screen while also knowing the kind of film they are in to help sell that performance even more. We've all seen movies and television shows have acting performances that feel like they are out of place or don't fit well within the world that the characters are being portrayed for. Here in Sinners, every single actor and character feels like they fit within the story, whether through historical accuracy or just based on how their characters know when to do certain things in their professions. No one here stands out enough to where I would be saying that someone should be getting nominated for an Oscar, although Michael B. Jordan as the twins is definitely something that is going to make people look at this guy even more now as an actor that you can really easily say is one of the better ones working today. This guy has had a great charm to him for the number of years that he's been on screen since he started his career, and he is a guy that I root for within the business because I think he really does love the craft and puts all his energy into it. The most underrated performance in my opinion was definitely Delroy Lindo. I want to see this dude in more movies because he brings a presence that is just perfect in terms of all kinds of tones, whether serious or funny. He gave my theater a lot of laughs and good moments. Now, unfortunately, I can't quite say that the movie is a masterpiece, but it's damn near one in my opinion. My only two critiques come from the thematic elements as well as how it's paced. If you've watched the movie already, then you'll know that there is definitely an aspect of social commentary within the story about how, say for example, the vampires relate to the idea of musical themes. One thing I definitely caught on at one point when the vampires show up to this juke joint that everyone is congregated in is that they come in wanting to play music with everyone else. In particular, most of what's being played is jazz and blues music. One of the most common historical points of view throughout history of music is that people believe that something like jazz and blues music was started by black people, but was stolen over time and is rooted in the broader context of American culture and racial history. Given the time period in which this movie takes place in, there is definitely some accurate depictions in terms of where you can find this thematic element. It also could just be a more broader commentary on just the idea of sharing music in general, given Jack O'Connell has a musical aspect to his character as well that he shares with the rest of the vampires, but also can see within others who are musically gifted as well. Just so we are clear, I'm not going to be one of those losers online in the internet who complains anytime something like this gets put into a film. My only issue is that I wish the film would have done more with it instead of what we got. It definitely feels like at one point they were playing on it to a degree within the middle portion of the film, but in the beginning and end, I wasn't really explored as much as I wanted it to be, at least consistently. Some of it also does get explored in the mid-credits scene after the film is done, and it gave a very interesting scene that I liked, but I know some people don't think it was necessary to add in. I think because of this, that is why the middle part of the movie and even a portion of the third act might be paced a little slower for a lot of people. Granted, the movie is about 2 hours and 17 minutes, including the credits, which you should absolutely stay for the credits because they do add to the film. Again, it's just something that I wish was explored a little bit more, and it felt like it did affect the pacing a little bit. On another note, I think there are some other aspects of commentary within the movie that could have been explored that aren't quite as fleshed out, but yet might have offered up the best reaction from the audience, at least in my theater. The very final action sequence at the end of the movie with one of the twin brothers was awesome to watch and leaned on something that was only really addressed slightly at the beginning of the movie. But again, it was really fun to watch, regardless if the thematic elements of it didn't quite cut in as much as they should have. Finally, let's have the conversation that we all should be having, which is to discuss this film's blockbuster appeal and how it can hopefully affect the future of films that we get. One of my biggest pet peeves in the world of film and television is that when I find fans and audience members say that they want more original stuff and that nothing new gets made anymore, it really does grind my gears. Original films and TV shows probably get made more than any other time in terms of their abundance. The problem, most of the time, is that people refuse to go and see them even when they still complain about it. Yes, most original stuff comes from indies or low-budget films that studios tend to not market as much, but my point still stands. They do get made a lot. Where I will agree with people in this conversation is that original blockbusters don't get made as much anymore. There is a distinction and difference made with these terms that must be addressed within having these conversations that, quite frankly, it saddens me that not enough people speak about. Studios don't need to take more chances on original films. They need to take more chances on original blockbuster films that have ideas that could easily really sell well without the need to have a big name IP attached to them. Whether you like it or not, Sinners is an original blockbuster horror film and is being received as much within that title. It's about to do really well at the box office within the budget of $90 million that it was made on, and also critically has been received well by the critics and audiences alike. It got an A cinema score, which is a new record that apparently has not been broken in 35 years. People are definitely clamoring for stuff like this, no matter if it's tackling vampires for the 897th time or it features other elements that some people might think they've seen before. What matters most is that creatives and studios find ways to take risks and conjure up ideas like this that, if created well, can be generational events. The execution of all these different elements that make a film work is also very vital, and we definitely would not be having this conversation if the film wasn't at least good in quality. Because it was a good to great film, depending on how you view it, we are able to have this conversation, and I am able to make this video here today discussing why I do believe that it is an incredible feat of original filmmaking and another example of pure cinema in the modern era of film. And there you have it. That is my commentary and analysis of Ryan Coogler's new movie, Sinners. What do you all think of the movie and my analysis of it? Last question that I want to ask you all. If you could come up with an idea for an original blockbuster that you want made, what would it be and who would you want directing it? Leave your comments down below, and please be respectful if you disagree with anything I said in my analysis. Thank you all for stopping by my channel. If you want to see more moving forward from me with regards to film and television, and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe if you are new here, and turn on that notification bell. I'm trying to build a community on here, and your support would be appreciated. That's a wrap, folks. I hope everyone here has a wonderful rest of the day, and I will see you all soon for the next video.